Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Awakening. And today it's going to be a really cool episode because we're going to be linking chronic illness, because we all have a chronic illness here, into today's topic from our guest Sophie, is going to be depression, which is it's going to be a good conversation because I don't think we've really done a topic around depression yet. So it's gonna be really cool to talk about. So Angela, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, then I'm going to get Sophie after you for her introduction. So Angela, would you mind if you do your introduction?
I'm Angela T. Jackson. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Tennessee, the USA, partnering with the UK. I'm excited about this conversation.
Yeah, lovely. And over to you, Sophie.
I mean, that was an introduction. I've got to follow that. I'm Sophie Ward. I live in the north of England and I suffer with chronic Lyme disease and other neurological disorders as well, which I'm excited to talk about. Obviously, mental health as a whole, anytime, but also depression today, just because it does link very closely to chronic illness.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. It's kind of like you never know what tomorrow's going to bring, really, do you? Um, yeah,
Absolutely. That can play really heavily on your emotional health. It's and physical and emotional health are a package deal anyway. So, you know, when both are suffering, they're bound to be pulled down by each other, really, which is upsetting, but it's just how it works.
yeah,
I agree. I like how you said that it's a package deal. You can't have physical health without mental health. You can't have mental health without physical health. And a lot of times people hear mental health and they automatically think mental illness, but we all have to gauge whether or not the health of our mind is stable or
Yeah.
if we need more support.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to kind of sort of have that word with yourself and say, actually, I do need help and support here. I am struggling. Because especially when you go through a chronic illness, like you think, I'm a warrior, like I've got to get up, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep fighting, treatments and like the different battles that you go through there. That why can't I do the same with mental health? Why can't I just get up out of bed? Why can't I do simple tasks anymore without becoming fatigued? And it's very difficult to, again, accept that help and really appreciate that you need the help and not feel guilty about needing the help.
yeah, yeah. It's tough, isn't it? Like to even ask for help sometimes. Within mental health because it's it is hard, like just to speak about your emotions and how you're feeling.
And sometimes you can't even begin to explain it because even it doesn't make sense to you at the time. So it's like, how can I reach out for help and, go and speak openly to someone else when I don't even know how to speak to myself about it? And that can also like hold people back from getting help because it's almost like an embarrassment thing. You don't want to embarrass yourself and not even knowing what's going on in your own mind, in your own body. And it's the same with like physical health. If you don't know what your symptoms are really trying to tell you, you don't want to go to the doctor and sort of be embarrassed about complaining about X, Y, and Z, but not really know why you're going in. And I think that does hold people back, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
there's
definitely does.
absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think we struggle with life is we don't see it as a mystery, and it is a mystery. We're figuring out the answers every day, and our own journey is our own. But we want answers. We want we like that's why we rely on Google so much because as soon as we've got a problem, we're like, I'll Google it, like I'll get instant answers. And it's not like that. We have to like figure it out. We have to do like the soul searching, the digging. We have to go from treatment to treatment. We have to go through different therapists to actually unlock different doors and actually make progress. And that's all part of life and life's journey.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are speaking volumes. I tell you, there's always that space where we as people in general, we fear the unknown,
Yeah.
and partnering that with having questions. Maybe we know how we feel, but we want the answer to the why. Why am I feeling this way? And then there's that cycle that takes you right back to fear, because you may not know, and it could be something noticeable from people around you. Maybe your family, maybe your friends, maybe coworkers are noticing that maybe your behaviors have changed. You know it, they see it, and you still can't explain it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you also go through a chronic illness, like every day you're waking up with the unknown, and that also plays on your mental health, because again, you're trying to forward plan, you're overthinking things, you're panicking about what, like you're saying, other people are thinking about you. And if you're, painted on that brave face and gone out publicly and sort of hidden your pain, have you done it well enough? And we're always over analyzing everything, because we do fear that fear is so great, because we do fear it so much, and it can be really overwhelming. And again, it prevents us from reaching out for help and support.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also have a chronic illness, and I can relate to, as you said, putting on that face, making up, wearing the mask, presenting as if everything is okay, but
Yeah.
carrying the burden of the pain, carrying the burden of sometimes just having a diagnosis. It can be relieving to know exactly what's going on, but there's still a weight that comes along with that. So, oh my goodness, this definitely, everything that's being said, it does point right back to mental and physical health partnering with one another. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you were saying before, and the journey that you go on with chronic illness and getting a diagnosis, it's such a weight off your shoulders when you do reach that point, because you fought for so long against doctors and surgeons and trying to get answers, and you've not really got very far. And then you doubt your mind whether you're making this up. Are you being a drama queen? Are the symptoms real? And you go through that as well. So when you get a diagnosis, it's like, I'm not crazy. But on the other hand, it's like, right, well, now I've got this to deal with now, and this is going to be a lifelong battle. How, I'm 20 something, how am I going to alter my life around this? How can I deal with this? Because I'm not mentally or physically prepared for it. And that can really send you in a spiral of like depression, because you don't know, you can't do what your normal friends do. And then you kind of doubt yourself, and you lose a lot of confidence, you lose so much self-esteem, because you almost feel less of a person because you can't keep up. And it's really hard. It really is hard, because I've been there where I've got a diagnosis and I thought, right, perfect. And then a couple of years after, I've just gone, because I've just not really adapted and accepted it. And it took a long time to kind of reach that sort of balance point. And again, I think it's through living it that we achieve that, and we only have to go through the experiences and the lessons
Yeah.
to really.
Mm-hmm. So, Sophie, you mentioned going through your own period of depression, and there's so many different symptoms that point to depression. We all may experience it in different ways. And when I say we all, there may be someone listening or watching that says, I have not experienced it. Depression can show up in different ways, maybe prolonged sadness, maybe it comes along with grief and loss, maybe there is a loss of a lifestyle or a situation that might change your mood. And so for you, what did depression look like?
Well, I have to like openly admit that I've gone through bad periods quite a couple of times in my life. So the first time was when I first contracted Lyme, but I didn't know I had it. So I used to swim for GB. So my goal was to go to London 2012 Olympics and swim for Great Britain. I was on the world class program and I was funded by the British Swimming Association. And that was my goal. That's what I was working towards. But when I went out into China, that's when I got the tick bite, but didn't know. I just had a fever. And I thought it was just the food because Chinese food over there is not like it is over here. So I thought I was just sick from the food. So they gave me 2 days worth of antibiotics, seemed fine, came home. And then when I was like 16, my body wasn't bouncing back like it used to do. And I was like, I don't understand why. Like I should be like full performance and I just wasn't. And it got to when I was like 16 and a half and my coach just turned around to me and was like, I think you're going to have to retire because I do not want you pushing yourself and then doing damage, like lasting damage that will affect you throughout your whole life. So obviously when you're training at that high level, you're putting your body through so much. Like I was doing 24 hours of sport every week in terms of like swimming, the gym and land training. And obviously I was only 16, so it's a lot on top of school as well. So when I was forced into retirement, I had probably 2 years from when I was like 18 where I just felt really down. I was struggling to get up out of bed. I didn't feel like my life had a purpose anymore because my dream had been taken away from me. And then obviously when you reach 18, I was starting to get really poorly with my Lyme, but didn't know I had Lyme at the time. And I went out drinking one night and it was like, I'd only just turned 18, so I didn't know my limits. But I was like, it kind of everything, just all the emotions. And I was like screaming at my parents, like, I've lost my dream. Like, you don't understand. Like, I don't want to get up in the morning. I don't want to be here anymore. Like, proper, like, just did not want to be here anymore. And that was like my way of like just releasing it all because I was keeping it bottled up. You know, I was watching all my friends go to uni and like thrive in life and carry out their dreams. But I never really sort of had any other hobbies in school because I was always in the pool. So I felt really, really bad. And I went through sort of that period of time where I really just like lost my marbles. And then I got to about 20 and I seemed to like stabilize myself. I got on the property market, I got a new job. I seemed to just kind of sort of like gain some sort of life back for myself because I was like, I'm not giving up. Like, I cannot give up. But then when I got to about 21, 22, my weight just dropped because I was having loads of food intolerances, again, due to the Lyme, but didn't know at the time. And I'd become a shell of myself and I didn't want to leave the house because I thought everyone knew me as like an elite athlete, all muscly, like proper, like, you know, more stacked than some of the boys. That, you know, now I'd become skin and bones, literally. Like I dropped probably 2 stone in like 6 months because I couldn't eat without being sick. Everything was just making me so ill. And then finally, when I was 23, I got the diagnosis. But probably a year before the diagnosis, like I wasn't leaving the house. You know, I had tried to take my own life because my family was saying it's all in my head and that I was just a drama queen because I'd lost my swimming career and it was just all like cycling back. My doctors were saying that I was fine. And I was like, I know that I'm not, like, I know my body. So I really found that year hard. And then I remember when I got my diagnosis, even my mum cried because I think she felt guilty because she'd made me feel like it was me and it was in my head. And yes, obviously at that time I was going through a lot of depression because I was losing my body almost. Like I didn't know what was going on in my body. I'd lost my dream, but also like I felt almost like my mind was also like putting doubt in it by saying like I didn't even have control over that. And I was like, yeah, I definitely still do. So when I got the diagnosis, she got upset and I felt like a massive weight off my shoulders. But then I think I got to like 25, 26 when COVID hit, and I felt locked in again and again, like restricted. And I was like, I don't like living in a box where first it was like my health, then it was like, well, first it was losing my career, then it was my health, and now like we're not allowed to go outside. I was like, my sanity is being tested here, like everybody's were. And again, like I feel like I felt not into like really bad habits, but I was creating content every day. I was like literally filling every single hour of my day because I didn't want to sit in the silence and have to deal with those emotions and those feelings that I was feeling. And that led me to burnout. That led me to get shingles and get really run down and quite poorly. So that was kind of, I've gone through different shades of depression and dealt with it in different ways. I think each like period I've had, but yeah, it doesn't get prettier every time you go through those periods.
Yeah, there are like you say, there's different types of de depression, and yeah, it is like a very good story because like you say, like you were doing swimming for a long time. Like it's really cool to say like with like nearly going to the Olympics and traveling to China, which yeah, it is really hard, especially if like people aren't believing you.
Yeah,
I think that's the hardest thing, because like and it's very bizarre sometimes, as well as if some people see you like if you've lost weight or you look different. I think it depends on people because when I was really ill, I lost a load of weight as well,
yeah,
and that it was. I didn't even know what I thought it was just a sickness bug or something like that. I didn't think it was a chronic illness. I didn't even know what a chronic illness was. Um,
yeah,
and then because at the time I was in year 11 at school, and I'd get a taxi, and I was off. I was off for maybe a week or so from getting diagnosed.
yeah,
And when before I actually got the taxi, I went out and I said, do you notice any? Do I look any different or anything?" Because I still went in when I was ill.
yeah.
And they said they thought I went on holiday or something. That's what they
Oh,
thought. Um, and they said they didn't notice it. So that's why it's called they call these illnesses invisible because they literally are.
yeah. I know you're always worried in the back of your mind that someone's going to say a horrible comment and that's going to make you mentally spiral as well.
Yeah.
So like I was a bit like you. I was just a bit like, oh my God, like I've got to go out into the public eye. That's why I wasn't leaving the house because like I was so conscious of it and I was like, I cannot take a bad comment because I'll overthink it and it'll live with me. That I was like, no, I'm not leaving my house. But I know what you mean. Like you feel like you've got a question.
Yeah, it's really hard as well because like going in knowing that I was going to have to catch up anyway, even though I wasn't going to go in. So what I would do, it wouldn't help at all because I had really bad pain in my stomach. It was horrible, and I would hold my stomach even though I wasn't going to do nothing. I wasn't going to. I guess it just made me feel better. And then I've got teachers saying, "Am I all right?" They said, "Do I want to go to the library?" And the reason that I declined, because every time a person goes through the library, Sam sitting down during a lesson, a teacher will go through because the printer is in the library where people collect stuff from the printer,
Yeah.
and then each teacher would come in and ask, "Why are you in the library? Shouldn't you be in lesson?" And
Uh,
mentally, you can't Like I took the decision. I say no. I want to stay in class because there will be a time where I'll get nasty, not because of I don't like the person. It's just because of how many people will walk in and just ask, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
When you are like that, you don't really want to be talked to at all, really.
Yeah.
You just want to be left alone. And I was asked to actually go to the nurse's office and take antibiotic, and I said, of course, I would love to. That would be lovely for it to help with chronic illness. That would be the best. But unfortunately, it doesn't work. Like it's not gonna it's not gonna work. I think the best you'll get in a situation that you are in a load of pain is a hot water bottle. But I don't know if they provide them at schools and stuff like that.
No, like painkillers. Get back to class. You're
Yeah.
done. But yeah, it is hard because you also feel like you're always over explaining, and a lot of people just they ask out of courtesy, but they don't actually want to know. And I think also you're like, well, actually, I'm already down on energy and zapped as it is. Emotionally and physically, I'm not quite there. So can you just give me a break? Because if you're not actually asking me to actually know, then it is quite draining.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Being encountered with people who ask, "How you doing? How are you feeling?" And it's just a formality.
Yeah.
So just like you said, Mason, sometimes I'll get nasty with them and say, "Do you really want to know, or are you just asking the question? Because I'm ready. I'm ready to spill it, you know?"
That their face just changes. That they're like, oh hi, how are you? And then all of a sudden, like you start explaining, they've zoned out, they've checked out, and you're just like, why am I continuing the sentence at that point?
Yeah, definitely. And from a mental health perspective, we've been talking about triggers. I've heard Mason say things about certain comments, and already it's set up in our mind to avoid, like, oh my goodness, I don't want to encounter the questions. I don't want to encounter other people who don't understand. It almost induces a fear, and there again plays into maybe that depression and the isolation and avoidance that's already present. So when you get someone that asks questions, especially about something that we don't necessarily understand fully, that's heavy. That's
Yeah.
heavy. I can remember before I was actually diagnosed, I was going through lots of different assessments, lots of different evaluations, blood work, etc., right? And I would be accused of being a hypochondriac. Similar to what you said, it's all in your head. I feel like I've heard it all. I was even accused of knowing what was wrong with me, but wanting to withhold information.
What?
And I still laugh today. That was so genuine because it just makes me laugh. Like, why would I withhold from a group of people that I trust? Why would I withhold even from my support system? Now, some random person, I wouldn't be so apt to share any personal detail, but it was a struggle because it took a full year of assessments, a full year of evaluation before I even got a diagnosis. So I genuinely had no idea. And so to be asked those unwanted questions that were triggering, and immediately in my mind, it took me back to a place of hurt. It took me back to a place of helplessness. And then after a period of, I would say, 9 to 12 months, that's where I felt the most hopeless because seemingly it had gone on forever and ever with no answers.
I know, and it's difficult because again, like you said, when they're telling you that you're withholding information, and these are the medical professionals that you've gone to for answers because they're medically trained to know what your labs are supposed to say and what they're not, and how to read an MRI scan, for instance. So when you hear that, you're like, oh my gosh, like, it's me. I am the problem, but it's not. It's them. Like, they're not doing their job properly. They should be wanting to give the best advice. And even if they don't have the answers, they should say, do you know what? I don't know what's going on. I can't work out what's happening here, but I'll refer you on to such and such, or let's do a scan and get a better view of it, rather than just saying, no, it's you're the issue. I think that's so wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. That was one of the worst answers I had ever received from a professional.
I'm
You're
never gonna
imagining it.
I'm never ever gonna
Cold.
Yeah, you sometimes wonder how professionals are professionals, don't you? Especially like in hospital, maybe, especially if you're there in the maybe A&E wards or ER wards, and you wonder, like, because to get information, it takes so long for actually to get anyone to give you information of why you're there. Like,
Yeah.
of course you know why you're there, but what's happening, what's like, give us an update. They spend so long, and you often think, well, why how are some people professionals? Because sometimes they don't even know what they're doing, and I think they should just admit that rather than lie, because
Exactly.
it's easier.
Well, yeah, that's it. And like, obviously, when I lost a lot of weight and I didn't know why, obviously, I just knew that I was being ill off certain foods. And I was going in every 2 weeks. It was like every other week for bloods and ECG, just to like check that I was okay. So the doctor would see me every 2 weeks. So he could see like the decline in me. And then as soon as I got my diagnosis of Lyme, and the tests were done abroad, they were done in Germany, and he just came back and he was like, they're fake, they're false. He was like, you're mentally unstable, you need to be sectioned. I was like, no, I'm switched on, like, I'm not stupid. Like, we've been recommended to go down to this clinic down south. They recommended to be, have the blood sent to Germany because it's the best place in Europe. And that's what I've done. So for them to say that, and then he sent me to a psychiatrist to make sure that he wanted them to basically say that was insane, so I'd be sectioned. And the guy was like, it's only going to take half an hour. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, ask whatever you want. I was in there for 2.5 hours. And at the end, he was like, I can't say that you're not mentally stable because you've answered every question, you switched on. And I asked for the report time and time again from my GP, and he never ever gave it me because obviously he didn't want to accept defeat. But because he'd seen me every other week and done nothing for over a year and watched me decline and never said, right, we need to refer you on to this person. I don't know what's going on, but I'll help you. They just watched me decline and then tried to blame it on me and tried to section me.
Yes, it is really bad because our professionals need to just admit where they're in the wrong, because they I think that most thing they fear is them losing their job if they get these stuff wrong. And like you say, within the waiting, I hate that. Like, say I get there at my appointment, if I go to hospital, if my appointment's at maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm normally there 2 hours waiting because that they're running late, which is understandable, but I always like to be there at a time because you never know. You might have plans. You might have plans afterwards, and like you might have a dinner set time that you have dinner every day or something. I don't know.
Or like have to get back to work. If like you've said to your boss, look, I'm going to be an hour. Like, am I all right to just leave for an hour while I do this appointment? And then you're sat there for 3 hours and you've missed half the day and you rock up like, we're finished.
And normally, it's about 15 minutes sometimes. It only takes about 15 minutes. So some of the appointments, and then sometimes you think that could have been done over the phone.
I know. I think with COVID though as well, like they don't even want face-to-face appointments anymore either. Like I don't know if your local doctors is like ours, but you can ring up for an appointment and I'll be like, right, I've come out with a rash. And they're like, all right, okay, what's the rash? You know, is it itchy? Is it like red? Whatever. And they're like, oh, we'll get a doctor to phone you. And I'm like, well, how's he gonna see the rash? Like, I'm not in person. I can't show him. He can't like diagnose anything. But it's like it's easier for them to phone people up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I was like I have a consult meeting every year, and this time I did do it via the phone because I requested it because of COVID was pretty high and my chronic illness was I didn't feel like I needed to go in, but
Yeah.
they said the next time they want to do it face to face, but they are quite on the ball with that, which it is better. And I think doctor surgeries are very hard to even get appointments sometimes. But if you have a specific person that you like to see that you're used to, they are normally the busier ones, and they are very hard to kind of get in touch with sometimes. But yeah, what I normally do now, say, because mask wearing is non-existent really anymore. I always tend just to wait outside. I normally around this time 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I
Yeah.
tend to be less busy at times.
Yeah.
If the schools aren't at school, so if it's like half term, I wouldn't go in then. But yeah, I always try to because not many people understand now. I think it's harder now than actually when it was like people wearing masks and keeping a distance. It's much harder
Yeah.
now because of people just think COVID's over.
But also, I think a lot of people during COVID who had chronic illness before had that sort of weight on their mental health in the sense that if they were poorly, would they be able to go and see a doctor because the doctors were so overwhelmed and so overrun with the issue that they were dealing with? And then it was like, if they do end up going to hospital, are they going to catch COVID and make things 10 times worse? So I think, again, like that played on a lot of people's minds who were chronically ill and probably zapped their mood a little bit because it was like a difficult sort of at that point. And it's very, very hard one to make.
Yeah, I think things that get missed, I think, especially within the lockdowns and like when COVID was really high at the start, like and people getting trying to get seen. I think it was mostly like a lot of the NHS over here in the UK would be more aware of people treating people that have COVID. And the unfortunate thing is that which is why it was really scary actually. If you have a chronic illness and you're diagnosed, it's really scary to actually go into the hospital because they they were like said, if you're very vulnerable, they would maybe try and treat a healthier person better than us because they have more chance of surviving than us, which I thought was really bad in that sense because they just wanted the healthier people to be to survive, which in a way you can see it, but in a way you want to try and help as many people as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult when you sort of have to do the tick box thing of like, do you make the cut of being treated and seen and given a chance? And that's scary.
It was very scary, and I'm fortunate I've never had COVID. I've always been really careful.
Oh.
um I've always been fortunate, but you kind of feel like it's gonna happen if you haven't got it. Yeah, you kind of feel it's gonna happen at some point.
Yeah, Well, I got it because my fiance, he's a builder and the building trade. So they carried on through the second lockdown. Obviously, they were off the first lockdown, but the second lockdown, so he was still mixing. And then we were fine. And then it got to sort of like the springtime, and then he came down with it. And I was like, I had all the symptoms, but I was testing negative. So I was on the phone to my mom, and I was like, I'm treating it as I have got it. I said I might not have it, but it just seems weird that I live with him. You know, we like sleep in the same bed. Like he's got it, surely I've got it when it's like so easily spread. So yeah, we just isolated for the 7 days, and it was a bit like flu for us, really. And then when we got flu this year, I thought, flipping it, flu's got worse.
Yeah.
It seemed like the flu just showed right back up.
Yeah.
Been on vacation or holiday.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was floored by it.
Yeah. Yeah. I am still pretty cautious. I do wear my mask. I like to see businesses and stores have the gloves out so you can use the gloves and sanitize your buggies if you're doing some shopping, things of that nature, because we do fall in that category of higher risk. So there's always the thought and the extra preparation
Yeah.
that's needed, and a little bit of it was a little fearful, right? Figuring out what things looked like when everything opened back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of taking those precautions and
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's very difficult because like obviously my fiance is like fully fit and like healthy. So he does take the lead on like shopping in like busy supermarkets because I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, and he's like, I'm fine, I'll do it. And he knows like in busy places I don't feel comfortable, so he'll take the lead. But in terms of like socializing and going out, he was like, you'll be fine in a bar. Like if it's a quiet bar, and I'm like, yeah, it has to be a quiet bar. Like with not very many people in at all. Like I do not feel comfortable. And it took me like a long time. I think it did help me having him because he was like, you'll be fine. He like calmed my anxiety a little bit. But at the same time, like I did expect him to be a bit flexible with me and say like if we were to go out, if we were meeting friends or whatever, I'd be like, right, I feel safe here because we can sit outside, or I feel safe here because it's quiet and dead. And he would work with me, so that helped. But I know it's difficult because I think if I hadn't have had him be flexible or help guide me out, I think I'd still be struggling with it today. I'd still be fearful of going out.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think with bars and places like that, I think I tend to do that if I ever go to somewhere. I'll always look if it's empty because it has to be empty, or just maybe a few people, like you say. I went to a place on holiday, Cardiff last year, and I'm going back this year. But I went to a bar which it might have been Liverpool actually. It, but I went to some bar and like you could see a load of people around, but they had this like really good place where you could sit. So you go to the people at the bar and ask it, can these anything be made? Can anything be moved? And then they did, and they put like on this little dome where not many people go. So I think it's good to go to places where you can ask if they can do things for you, so it makes you more comfortable.
Yeah, and like I think I always felt safer as well, like knowing that you could order from the table or like from like the barcodes and things. Because I thought, right, if I get in my seat and there's no one around me and I don't move, then I'll feel happier. Because everyone just goes to the bar and you've got like people like changing cash over, like you're picking different things up. So I was like, if I can just sit in my place, I'll feel a lot happier. But again, it's about like adapting whenever you've got chronic illness and you have to adapt for your mental health. You do what you feels right for you, and it was a bit like that with COVID. We had to learn the new normal. We had to make it work for our situation personally, as well as like the whole situation as a whole, like with everything opening up. And I think that's sort of the hard area of mental health, but also like it's kind of like magical side is that you can tailor it around your needs. And as long as you're like emotionally connected with yourself and you understand your emotions and work through any emotions that come up and put into place like healthy coping mechanisms and not the unhealthy ones, then I think that's where you start to learn what's right for you, and you gain a bit more like uplift in your mental health as a whole.
Yeah. Sophie, you said healthy coping mechanisms. Can you share with us some of the coping mechanisms you use to navigate through depression and depression and chronic illness?
So for me, my two favorites, actually, no, I've got three, but the third one I'm not very good at. So my third one's baking, but it always goes disastrous. James absolutely hates it when I'm baking in the kitchen because I'm like, I'm baking cookies. And he's like, oh, these will be good. And they come out burnt and just like uneatable. My other two, adult colouring I started when I first went into hospital with Lyme and had my first sort of treatment of antibiotics for the Lyme. And I was like a bit lost. I didn't know what to do. And my mum got me loads of adult colouring books and I just loved it. And I lost myself for hours in it because I was like, this, it's very rewarding because you can see what you've done at the end and you've created a picture. And then when COVID hit, I was like, well, I've been doing adult colouring now for like sort of 3 years. I need something a bit more, like a bit different, we've got a lot of hours to fill. And she was like, well, what about paint with diamonds? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like that. Anyway, I loved it. Like, again, you create the picture, but you spend hours just like putting all the little diamonds in place and it's all color like coded and you follow the code. And it's really good fun. And like, again, I lost hours in it and I really enjoyed it. So I think they're my top two. I have ordered a paint with diamonds kit that's going to come this weekend to try like painting, but I don't think I've got a steady hand for it. So we'll see how that goes. But I do try and like have like creative things that gives you a boost because you've got the finished product in front of you and you think, I've created that. And that instantly just gives you that boost that you sometimes need. So I do enjoy sort of the creative side, even though I'm no artist. Didn't do very well in school.
That's okay. That's okay. When you use art of any form as a coping mechanism, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look good. It just has to feel good.
Yeah, I think that, and like you say, like you're putting your own personality into it. So even if it looks rubbish, you're like, yeah, I'm really proud.
Yeah. Because there's so many other types of arts that it could be art where you draw, it could be art like online if you do graphic designs for certain things. There's so many different ways you can do that.
I would love to draw, but I just can't. I'm so bad. And my granddad can draw amazingly. He's so good, and I can't do it. But he just draws the pictures and then sends them to me to colour. We like working a little line.
Yeah, like so like when you go to visit places like in different places, that you have these people who are just drawing people just really quickly, like and they have to sit down. I can't believe how fast they do it. Like they don't know you, they have to draw you, and then it's done. Yeah.
5 minutes and you've got and it's like what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love art and things, and they have helped me through tough times, I'd say.
Yeah. I think that's really great that you find something that helps you get through it, and like even just if you draw, or you get one of those books where you colour something. I always like them. I haven't done it for ages though, but they are always nice to, like you say, to see what it looks like at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, you do lose hours. Like you can start at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then you look at the time and you're like, oh, it's 4 o'clock. And you're like, well, actually, have I actually made any progress? Because you've just done like one section. It's taking you that long. But I think that's the beauty of it, is like it does take your time, and you do have to give a lot of energy and time to it. And almost that makes the finished product even better, because you think, actually, do you know what, this has taken me all week to do, so I'm quite proud of stuck at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is really great. Like it's always good fun.
Yeah.
Sophie, would you mind like just talking about your podcast a little bit, like how you started it, like why you started it and stuff like that?
Yeah, so in 2018 was like the year after I got diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I joined Lyme Disease UK just purely as support and to help me, because I just didn't know anything about it. To be fair, I hadn't even heard of Lyme disease before I got diagnosed with it. So I joined it to just access like support and just see what everyone else was talking about when in terms of like treatment and things. Because again, it was a bit of a minefield, didn't know what was going on type of thing. And I got in with the admin team, and I was doing blogs for them, because that was something that helped me through depression, was like blogging and just like getting everything out onto a page. So I did like a lot of like chronic illness topics in terms of like relationships and how we balance life and pacing, and they put them on the website. And they rang me up one day and they said, oh, BBC Breakfast wants someone to go on and speak about Lyme disease awareness. Will you do it? And I was like, what? In front of like millions of people? I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And then my mum was like, just do it. Like, your stuff now. You've done a lot of work with Lyme Disease UK, and you've done your research for over a year and a half at that point. So I was like, okay. So I didn't know what to expect. But anyway, I did it, and like I enjoyed it. Like I felt nervous, but nerves melt away, because I think when you've got a mission, you're set on just saying the message and getting across the real feelings that's going through what you're going through, as well as what sufferers are going through. So they called me back the month after to go on again. And then Sky News rang to say, can you come on Sky News? So I was like, oh my God, like what's going on here? But I built my confidence up, and then I went on BBC Radio Lancashire. And from then, Chorley FM, which was like a local radio station to us, like rang me up and said, like, will you do a show, like co-host a show? So I was like, okay, like I've not really done any DJing or anything, but I'll give it a shot. And then sadly, because of sort of COVID was like on its way, and the radio station was basically locally funded, so they completely shut down because they didn't have the funding the same from the community, because no one was able to go out. So I was like, well, to be fair, like I really enjoy like discussing chronic illness topics. And I spoke about it with my mum, and I said, do I just go with the angle of like Lyme, or do I like open it up to like mental health, chronic illness? And she was like, well, I think obviously discuss Lyme disease on it, but I think it'd be great to like broaden the whole topic up a little bit, because then it reaches more people can relate. So that's how it came about. And I spent time like going back and forth with different names, and I just like chronic but iconic, because I just thought, even though you've got a chronic illness, you can still create a legacy, you can still do amazing things. And I think my mission was to make people be motivated to still live out their dreams, even if their dreams are slightly changed and they've had to alter them because of the chronic illness. that they're still great and they've got magic within them. So yeah, Chronic but Iconic was born, and then I just got on like a range of different guests who suffered with different chronic illnesses across the board, and who had gone through mental struggles with their chronic illnesses and really shared them. And it really took off, and we got to discuss different, like you're doing with your podcast, is discussing different angles of chronic illness, like relationships, like pacing, like finding a work-life balance, and friendships as well, because you lose a lot of friendships, sadly. So yeah, that was how it was born, and now we're on the eighth season, so it's a bit crazy.
Wow.
That is great.
I love that.
Well, I had to dial it down because the first season I got a bit excited, and I was like, right, and I was like doing 2 a week, and I did 30, I think, in series 1, 30 episodes, and I was like, this is too much, like once a week for 10 weeks and do it twice a year. And I thought that's fair. That's manageable.
Yeah, that is understandable. But I think it's great. Like, it's been going on for a little while.
Yeah.
I created this one in 2020 actually.
Yeah.
And the main focus is around like Crohn disease and autism, because I have them, so I vary guests within that. But to start with, I did do a few series, and then but I thought I'll do different series about different things. So this one's mental health.
Yeah.
I've done an autism series, and hobby series within that. So I like to vary about different topics
Yeah.
that involve other communities as well, which can relate. So I think a podcast is good fun, isn't it? The way you get to meet these really good people while you do it.
Yeah, and you take a lot from the guests as well. I think that was the biggest like learning curve that I went on. I was like, right, I'll interview these, they'll be great. But I came away and I was like, do you know what? Like, actually, I want to try baking. Like, I want to try this. Like, I was really empowered by their own stories, and it almost brings comfort as well to what you're going through, because you can relate to them and you realize that you're not alone. And if you have had like friendships, relationships break down, so have they, so have other people, and you're not the only one. And that brings a lot of comfort as well, I find.
Yeah, it does. I think it does, and it's great. It's easy. It's just easy and nice, like doing it, even if it's like we are now. There's things that you can put in place to see if you wanted to do it in person with people in the future, which it's a little bit harder. Like you say, like with your name, like changing a couple of times, I think that's normal. Like mine changed a couple of times, and logo, and you want to keep it like it is for a little while, because it's hard. I think that's the hardest thing, getting a name, getting maybe a logo picture. That I think
Yeah.
everything else is a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sophie, tell us how we can follow you and find you on other platforms or all platforms. What does that look like for you?
So obviously my podcast is on Spotify, so just Chronic but Iconic. And then my Instagram page is Sophie Wardy. Well, sorry, Sophie Wardy. My Twitter is Sophie Wardy. But yeah, Instagram, I post a lot of chronic illness and mental health. Just sometimes it's just quotes that just uplifting, but a lot of times it's like diving into activities that can help boost and like soothe anxiety, and energy drainers, and just I wanted it to be a platform where a lot of people could relate to it, not even if you've just gone through mental health or chronic illness, but just daily kind of life advice, snippets of advice as well. So I do a lot on Instagram, to be fair. It's my favorite platform. So yeah.
Yeah. It's very understanding, isn't it? Instagram with chronic illness. I think it's great as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been great speaking to you guys. But as I always end it this way, I'm just going to give you both, if you have any last thoughts or anything else that you just want to finish on, or any advice. Now you can just I can start with you, Sophie, if you like. Like, if you do you have any advice to other people with chronic illness or mental health?
I think when you're going through any like mental health struggles or like chronic illness struggles, you feel like a burden to your loved ones, but you have to remember that you are unique and you bring so much to the table. You may not see it, but everyone else will see that you bring a lot of magic to the table, and your loved ones love you because you're you. And don't allow your chronic illness or mental illness define you, because you are still a person at the end of the day, and you bring so much to the world, and don't ever think that you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. We're all unique in the universe, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Angela, do you have anything else that you just want to add on to that?
I am so glad that we had Sophie as a guest today. You have brought so many different tools, so many different nuggets that we could take away today. And I just want to remind the viewers and listeners of the emergency numbers that you can call when there is a mental health crisis, when you're feeling alone, when you're feeling hopeless and helpless, and maybe you don't have an identified mental health professional. And normally the time that I suggest getting one is when you're experiencing an increase of emotions in excess, right? If your life has changed, maybe you've been feeling down, but when it's prolonged, when the sadness is prolonged, when the isolation is prolonged, maybe there's depression related to a chronic illness, like we've discussed, take the time out. Do it for yourself. You deserve it. Reach out to someone that you can talk to. So in the US, the 3 numbers are 988. That's the mental health crisis line. And for UK, Republic of Ireland, it says the emergency numbers are 112 and 999. There's also a 24/7 helpline. That's 116 123. Reach out. You do not have to suffer in silence. Do not suffer alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that, Angela, because that is really important. And yeah, maybe perhaps we should say that every few episodes we do, because I think that is very important. But to anyone listening and anyone watching, I hope it's nice weather. I know that's a bit random, but as before we started, we all said we don't like rain, and at the moment where I am, it's raining. So,
I've got cloud.
yeah, yeah. So fingers crossed it's not raining. But thank you, Angela, and thank you, Sophie. It's been really great speaking about depression, because it's a very important topic that I think needs to be spoken about more often. But yeah. But thanks, Angela, and thanks, Sophie. I hope you both have a nice rest of your day in the rain, if it's raining.